guys, what's up? Welcome back to my channel. In today's video I wanted to share with you guys my personal pros and cons for living in Nashville, Tennessee. Before I moved to Nashville, I actually lived in Portland, Oregon for 5 years, so I will probably be referencing Portland and the Pacific Northwest in general quite a bit in this video, just because that's where I lived my whole life. I actually did a pros and cons video for Portland, so if you guys are interested in that video, I'll link it down below. So let's go ahead and get started with the pros. I wrote down a bunch of pros and cons on my phone, so I'm going to be referencing those throughout this video. So my first pro for living in Nashville is that rent is quite a bit less expensive than a lot of other major cities. So I'm talking about cities like Seattle, Portland, New York, San Francisco. Nashville is definitely not at the top of the major cities list, but it's definitely up there as far as major cities. So just to give you guys an idea, the apartment that we're currently living in Nashville is a 1-bedroom apartment, and it is $1,300 a month, but we did have a move-in special for a month free, so technically if you prorate that, it's about $1,200 a month. So the apartment complex that we live in is completely brand new. They're actually still building a ton of other complexes on the property, so all of the finishes, everything is brand new, everything is very spacious. We have a huge kitchen, huge living room, so a lot of bang for your buck for only $1,200 a month. Compared to living in Portland, an apartment like this would probably be more in the $1,700 to $2,000 range. We also have a lot of other amenities like a pool, a clubhouse, a fitness center. They're building a dog park, so we definitely wouldn't be able to get all of this for that price back in Portland. Just to give you a little bit of a comparison. Homes are also a lot less expensive here than they are back in Portland, which was another reason why we kind of wanted to move to Nashville in the first place. I lived in definitely one of the worst areas of Portland, and on the street that I lived on, there was a little 2-bedroom house, I think for sale for $400,000 in not a nice neighborhood. Not even that nice of a house. There's a lot of crime in that area that I lived in. And then to live in a nicer area in Portland, you're definitely going to be spending a minimum of $600,000. That's just for the main city of Portland. Obviously, you could move out to the suburbs and find something a little bit less expensive, but I've always wanted to live in a city. I just prefer that. There's more to do. So I'm talking about houses that are in the proper part of the city. When we were first looking at houses in Nashville, just to get an idea, there were a lot of condos and townhouses for I think $200,000. And then of course bigger houses kind of went from $250,000 and up, just depending on the area and the home. So obviously way less expensive than in the Pacific Northwest. Another huge pro for me personally is the fact that Nashville is so close to so many other major cities. So far we've visited Memphis, Tennessee, which is a 2.5-hour drive from Nashville. And then we've visited Birmingham, Alabama, which was a 3-hour road trip. Obviously, our travel plans have been put a little bit on hold right now, but some of the other major cities we want to visit are Atlanta, which I think is 4 hours away. St. Louis, Missouri is very close. Charleston, Savannah, Georgia. A lot of these cities are pretty close. So there are a ton of cities that you can road trip to within 2 to 6 hours. Obviously there's an airport here, so you can fly to other major cities as well, like New York, for quite a bit less expensive. Back in the Pacific Northwest, if we were to buy a ticket to the East Coast, it would be $500 at least. So obviously being here in Nashville, we're so much closer to a lot of the major cities on the East Coast, so tickets are a lot less expensive. Another pro is that traffic really isn't too bad here. One of the things that kind of sucked in Portland was that traffic was always really bad. Of course, not as bad as LA or New York, but still. And here in Nashville, traffic on the freeways especially isn't bad at all. Traffic does get a little bit worse in the neighborhoods during rush hours, but it's never as bad on the freeway. We live near Brentwood, so it takes us about 20 to 25 minutes to get into downtown Nashville, which is definitely not bad considering that we are kind of farther outside of the downtown area. Another pro is that it's very easy to get around the main city of Nashville. The main downtown area where all the skyscrapers are and where the Gulch is very close to East Nashville, 12th South, the Hillsborough neighborhood. It's all fairly close together, so it's really easy to get around. You can get to a lot of those major spots fairly quickly. So that's especially nice for people who are visiting the city. Another pro, of course, is all of the music history that we have here in Nashville. It's always been kind of a hub for musicians, and it still is, especially for country artists. There's the Johnny Cash Museum downtown, which is actually just off of Broadway, where all of the honky tonks are. Broadway, of course, is a huge tourist attraction for those who are visiting Nashville. It basically stretches across a few blocks, and there's tons of restaurants, bars, honky tonks. The honky tonk culture here is a very big part of Nashville's history. There are a lot of musicians in Nashville, of course, that are trying to make it in the music industry, and a lot of them play at the honky tonks on Broadway, so you can always go there and listen to live music. There's a ton of concerts here all year round. A lot of them are at the Grand Ole Opry, which is just outside of downtown. Both Skylar and I love music, so that was definitely something that really attracted me to Nashville. Another pro is that the weather is fairly nice here all year long. The winters really aren't too cold compared to like the Pacific Northwest where I'm from. So that's definitely nice, because I was definitely getting tired of the harsh winters there. Just as a comparison, right now it's springtime, and I think it was like there was a day where it was 80 degrees, and I checked back to see what the weather was in Portland, and it was 44 degrees. Of course, there's like a 2-hour time difference, so it probably would have heated up a little bit more throughout the day, but still it's a pretty big comparison as far as how warm it is during the springtime. So it's definitely a really good city if you're looking for a place that has like mild weather all year long. We're in the South, but we're still kind of like in the middle of the country, so of course it's not like farther down south where it gets super hot, or more up north where it gets colder, so it's pretty mild all year long. My last pro is that people are a lot friendlier here in the South. Southern charm is definitely a thing. Everyone that we have met has been very nice, very friendly. Definitely a lot friendlier than people in the Pacific Northwest, in my opinion. So that's definitely nice, because everyone has made us feel very welcome. Okay, so on to cons. My first con that I noticed right away when we moved to Nashville is that people here drive like crazy. I know that there's crazy drivers everywhere, like obviously there was crazy drivers in Portland too, but I feel like over here it's on a different level. There are constantly drivers breaking laws, running through red lights, darting around on the freeway, darting around on city roads. Just a lot of risky drivers. I really don't know what it is. Maybe the traffic laws here are more lenient, maybe the cops are more lenient, maybe drivers' courses are more lenient. I'm not really sure what it is. But there's always a ton of accidents, and I definitely noticed it when we first moved here. There were accidents like all the time. We live off of a main road, so I still hear like ambulances going by a lot. So that's definitely a con, in my opinion. The state of Tennessee in general is a lot more conservative than the Pacific Northwest where I'm from. For example, you actually can't buy alcohol on holidays. The other day it was Easter, we went to the grocery store and I wanted to buy some wine, but we couldn't because they don't sell wine on holidays. Another con is that Tennessee is actually in the area that they call Tornado Alley. So tornadoes do happen here. A lot of the times tornadoes that happen are more mild, but there was actually a really bad one that happened I think after a month that we'd been living here. The last one that bad had happened in 1998, which is actually the year that my sister was born, so like over 20 years ago. I asked around to some of the locals because it had never occurred to me that tornadoes happened here. I don't know why I didn't think about that when we moved over here, but I just really hadn't ever heard of them happening in Nashville, so I kind of just didn't think that they did. And some of the locals here said that they do happen, but a lot of the times they're just very mild, not like super destructive, and a lot of them kind of hit other areas instead of Nashville, so like like Memphis has more tornadoes. A lot of the times they miss this area. But besides that, there's always a ton of thunderstorms. I actually got an app that will alert me if there's ever a tornado, and it actually alerts you first to let you know that there's going to be thunderstorms, because when there's thunderstorms happening, that's when it's likely that a tornado might happen. That's definitely a con, considering the fact that in the Pacific Northwest we didn't have a lot of natural disasters like that. Another con is that the summers here are very humid. Portland is also humid, but definitely not as humid as here. They also get a lot of mosquitoes and other bugs like that in the summer. As I was saying earlier, Broadway is one of the main tourist attractions here in Nashville, but what kind of sucks is that parking anywhere remotely close to Broadway is very expensive. It's hard to find parking because, of course, there's always tons of tourists visiting Broadway. There's a lot of parking lots in that area, but they are like $20, I think, for like an hour or two. So very expensive. You can find street parking where you just kind of pay the meter. I think it's like $2 or so for an hour, but it can be pretty hard to find those spots. I heard that a lot of people park quite a bit farther away and then just Uber there, actually, just to save like a little bit of money. Or you can just like park far away and walk. But I would say that's definitely a con. There was nowhere in Portland that had that expensive of parking. You could always find like parking on the street, or if you couldn't find parking on the street, there were parking garages called Smart Parks that were only like a couple bucks an hour. So 20 bucks is definitely pretty steep. But like I said, that's of course the main tourist attraction, so I can see why they're trying to make extra money on parking. My last con is that there are not a lot of grocery store options over here. Back in the Portland area, we had, of course, Whole Foods, we had New Seasons, Safeway, Fred Meyer, Albertsons, so definitely a ton of options. Whereas here in the Nashville area, they really only have Kroger, Publix, and then of course like you can get groceries at Walmart, Target. There's a Whole Foods downtown. They have a couple Trader Joe's, but that's it, just 2. Whereas in the Portland area, I think we had like 5 Trader Joe locations. Trader Joe's is one of my favorites, so I was definitely a little bit disappointed to find that they only had 2 here, and they're both pretty far away from where we live. It's actually kind of funny because there's way more fast food options than there are grocery stores. So those are my personal pros and cons for living in Nashville. We absolutely loved living in Nashville so far. It's a very fun city, tons of history, tons of music, tons of things to do. So it's definitely a great place to live. I really just wanted to make this video for those of you who may be considering moving to Nashville and want to get an idea of what it's like to live in the city. I get tons of DMs about living in Nashville on my Instagram, so I thought that this might be a helpful video. I hope that you guys liked it. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. And if you guys aren't subscribed already, please be sure to subscribe to my channel, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!